beaucoup à Bounas, Père Joseph, Père Raphaël, Père Michaud et Aziz, et M. Antoine Malik, président de l'association COP de Montréal, Dr Naguid, M. Malek et M. Boulos, mes chers amis, mesdames et messieurs, it's a real pleasure to join with you. First of all, earlier today at the end of the liturgy here at St. George and St. Joseph Parish, thank you. I feel a very close affinity for the Coptic community, which has done so much to contribute to Canada. We first about the incident on the previous 4th of November, and we took immediate action to ensure that the Canadian Department of Foreign Affairs and our embassy raised this matter with the appropriate authorities. Friends, I want you to know that one of the reasons I hope that you chose to make your future here in Canada, one of the reasons why this country is a sign of hope for people around the world, particularly victims of persecution, is because this is a country that believes in the primacy of freedom of religion, is freedom of beliefs and values. Now, we believe that freedom of religion is a universal value and must be respected by every country and every government in the world. The Catholic Pope John Paul II once said that the first right is the right to freedom of religion. Because if we do not have the right to follow our own conscience on the ultimate questions of faith, then ultimately we have no rights at all. And what we see throughout the world today is a deeply disturbing trend towards violence against vulnerable religious minorities. We saw a woman just condemned to death, supposedly for violating the Pakistani blasphemy laws. We saw Christians in Afghanistan condemned to death for the crime of believing in Jesus Christ. In the past month, we have seen armed gunmen storm into churches in Baghdad during the celebration of the holy mysteries of the Mass, and Christians slaughtered like sheep by insane rebels. What we saw by the 24th of November in Egypt, we all know, was just a continuation of the pressure, harassment, and too often violence suffered by the Christian people of Egypt. It brought our minds and our hearts back to the terrible violence of Al-Qamadi on Christmas Eve of this year, when people whose only crime was to go and worship their God on the most peaceful time of the Christian calendar, the Christmas meal, crime were shot Christian and were gunned and been home to Christians for 2,000 years since the arrival of the Holy Family. And I just want you to know that Prime Minister Harper and the Government of Canada understand the pressure that your brothers and sisters face every day. And not only our brothers and sisters in Egypt, but around the world. Several years ago, I had an opportunity to Mubarak. And along with some brave members of the United States Congress, like Frank Wolf and Christopher Smith, who are great friends of the Coptic community, I was able to raise directly with President Mubarak the failure of the Egyptian authorities to protect the Copts from the violence that we all know as the El Kosh massacre, and to raise within the failure of the authorities to hold to account those who should not for violation of freedom and the sanctity of humanity. Last May I was in Cairo and again raised our concern about the ongoing pressure faced by Coptic Christians in their land of origin, including, for example, the difficulty, sometimes impossibility, for the Coptic Orthodox Church to obtain permits merely to build churches or to repair those in need of repair. We recognize that the Coptic community is a huge, growing, young community in Egypt, and a faithful community. Is that one paradigm of persecution causes their faith much more seriously. I know one of the challenges the church generally here in Canada and around the world faces is in lands of freedom to maintain the fidelity of people. I think the Coptic Church, the Coptic community may be an exception to this rule, in part because Baba Shunda has put so much emphasis on the youth and the challenges that they face to maintain their faith in Western societies. I had the great honor of welcoming Pope Shunda to Canada when he was here, was it last year or 2 years ago, and to express to him the deep affection of the government. I was in Canada and Prime Minister Mayor, and met with Rita for him, that Canada will continue to be a voice that insists on respect for human dignity, religious freedom, for protection of the Coptic people, and for Christians and other religious minorities throughout the world. So I simply want you to know, dear friends, that nous avons dans ce pays, comme M. Malek a dit, certains droits, mais avec ces droits, y compris le droit de conscience, la liberté de religion, il y a certaines obligations démocratiques. Il faut s'impliquer dans le processus. Il faut donner voix, your voice, over the government. Yes, we need Canada. Let me say because it's the Coptic community, and I say this as a minister of immigration, of citizenship, and multiculturalism. I deal with all of the cultural communities in Canada, more than 180 countries of origin, 250,000 newcomers every year, 180,000 new citizens every year. I attend hundreds and hundreds of events, meet with thousands of people from all of these communities every year. And I want to say that I truly believe that the Coptic community has demonstrated itself for all of those other communities to be a positive model for integration, a community that has aspects without being in society, while maintaining fidelity to its own faith and traditions. And I think that is a tremendous model, a gift that you have brought to Canada and can offer to others. We've been fairly successful at welcoming these newcomers from all around the world, different faiths, different cultures, and doing so with relative social peace. But we cannot take that success for granted. We cannot take that success for granted. We see our Western Europe and other more radical world in extremism and violence. We see some who feel that they are for some reason at war, in conflict with their host countries. And we have been very clear to those who would import radical or extreme ideas to Canada that such ideas are not welcome. If you choose Canada, you must choose Canadian values. That means peaceful respect for your neighbors, respect for freedom of religion, respect for Canada's traditions and values. I want to thank the opportunity for being here and I want to agree and to assure you that we will continue to be sensitive to the unique challenges that your community faces. Canada is doing remarkable things to stand up for rolling over the religious minorities facing persecution throughout the world. To give you one example, you know that because of the violence in Iraq, tens of thousands of Iraqi Christians and others have had to flee their homes. I visited with some of these families in Damascus last year.